All right. Well, good day, everyone. Hello, my name is Steve Jackson. I have with me today Lisa Collins, either on my left or on my right. I'm not sure, depending on your computer there. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Looks like we've got a lot of folks that are still logging in here at this time, but we're going to get going. We've got, as you all are probably very much aware, we pack a lot of great content in to a short amount of time, okay? And we're gonna do the same thing here with you today. I think it was a couple months ago that we introduced the webcam as a structure here for our webinars. We had on Brooke Lanier and myself here. I think it was back in April when we did that last, and we had a tremendous amount of fun doing that. And I told Lisa, since we're going to do this next one, let's make sure. I mean, people need to see people, right, Lisa?
Yeah.
So we wanted you to at least, I know we can't see you, but we wanted you to certainly be able to see us here today. And so Lisa Collins and I are going to enjoy kind of doing a little give and take here with you this afternoon or in the morning, depending on where you are here, where you're located. We're thrilled that you've joined us today. As many of you are aware, we try to hold these webinars on a monthly basis or sooner, depending on pandemics that arise or whatever else that comes our way. We want to make sure that we're providing real strategies, real solutions, ultimately those things that are going to help you with your clients and support your efforts with your clients. And so today's topic, compliance changes galore, is kind of like a two-parter here today. And I want you to kind of bear with us for the first 2/3 of this webinar, because we are going to touch base in the initial 2/3 on some more of these kind of like a case study, if you will, or a scenario, an employer-employee scenario, where we want to tie some key compliance requirements of the day in with you, okay? Things that have been coming up more readily here now as decisions are being made with employers, certainly during this pandemic. Let me just lay out, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I do want to touch on just some of the logistics. We do want to hear from you, although with the content that we have today, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to your questions here today. But if you would, go ahead and type in your questions at any time. I see that some of you have already kind of started to ask some questions or to give some thumbs up, so thank you for that. So go in the question box in your GoToWebinar menu, and you can type in that question at any time. But I think what we'll end up doing is just getting back to you here after the webinar is completed. One of the key questions that we do receive is, are you recording it? Yes, we're recording this. So you're going to be able to view this here at a later date. We also are going to provide you a copy of the presentation deck itself. Okay, so you will have a copy of the deck here for your review. All right. I think that'll at least do for the logistics here today. So again, if you guys are just logging in and you see a couple people up here, don't be alarmed. You're in the right webinar, all right? And so to my right or left, I have Lisa Collins. She's the director of our broker concierge services here at PrimePay. She has worked together with her for now a decade plus. And I'm thrilled to have, sorry, I'm dating myself, not you, Lisa, but thrilled to have Lisa on board. Lisa also manages our national broker relationships. She also manages our HR services teams that get involved with bSwift and Employee Nav and Ease and some of those Ben Admin platform builds that many of you are working on here today. So Lisa's perspective on this here today should be, I'm thrilled that you're able to join us, Lisa, so welcome.
Thank you for having me. Happy
so,
hump day, everyone. No, just happy hump day. It's Wednesday.
That's right. That's right. It's always a happy day, whatever, I guess. We need to make it that way. All right, so let's dive here into the agenda here for today. We do have several things that we want to touch on. The first part, as I'd mentioned, the first 2/3 of this is centered around a scenario, a case study, if you will, to show some real examples of decisions that employers are making and how that impacts the employee, right? whether not just the employee specifically, but also the benefit components that go around it and the compliance requirements that go around it. And so those first 5 bullets, 5 bullets there are really centered around a lot of that scenario. But I ask you to stick around for the last third here of the presentation. We are introducing to you today an opportunity to use a new tool with your agency for your clients, and it's called the Compliance Assessment Tool. And we want to bring this to life for you today because we think that it can truly impact conversations and discussions that you're having with your clients or prospective clients here in the coming weeks and months ahead. So we want to touch on that here today. So Lisa and I will we're going to do some give and take here throughout the presentation. So I hope you get a lot out of it. Please take notes, ask questions here as we go along. So the first thing that we want to touch on before we get into really the scenario, but to set the stage, right, is that it's important to review certainly the policies, the documentation, the benefit programs that your employers have adopted for their employees. This pandemic has clearly stressed or placed a lot of questions on whether the employer's policies actually stand the test of time or stand this current time period, or whether it can't. I look at one of the bullets there under leave policies, and it's just under handbook. You think about the pandemic and just what everybody has been going through right now. Employers are obligated, right, under ERISA and certainly under other rules, to communicate, to disseminate. You're supposed to communicate your policies and the information to the employees. It's important to do so. And what this pandemic has really shown is that many employers were not prepared. And an employee handbook is actually a very wonderful way, a very comprehensive way for one document to be given to one employee or to all employees, and for it to be able to distribute and communicate a very wide range of policies and procedures that go well beyond paid time off policies, right? It actually talks about company culture, the objectives of the company, and also then certainly goes into the policies and procedures. So what we have seen tremendously in this time period is that many employers were not prepared to effectively communicate this information as they needed to. One other key item too is on definitions, and we did bring this up in a previous webinar, but I do just want to bring it up here again. The definition that you have for a furloughed employee or an employee that's laid off could be different than what Prime Pay thinks is the definition for a furlough or a layoff employee. It certainly could be different from an employer, right? And so the main point here in regards to employee definitions, what we've seen over the last several months is that employers are making decisions about their employee population. They need to make some dramatic shifts in which employees need to stay, come, go, those employees that we indeed need to have come back if we do kind of let them go. And so those decisions are definitely interacting with the benefits that employee has, all right? And so as we look at some here today, and I'll reference these a little bit more here in a couple other slides, but you see there furlough. A furloughed employee is one where that employer says to you, hey, I have absolute every intention to bring this employee back in the same capacity, the same role, but based certainly on the pandemic, I can't keep them on the books here right now in regard to payroll, okay? A furloughed employee, though, may have a leave of absence, right? Generally, maybe it's 3 months, something like that employee may be away. That can change, though, based on the needs of the employer and what they're facing. But that furloughed employee is still, although inactive maybe in payroll where they're not receiving a paycheck, they are still active on benefits, and that's a real important point, and it will be a piece of our scenario here today that we want to cover with you. A layoff has some intent that you are going to bring that employee back, but you really just don't know when, or it's not at 100%. There's some guesstimates here as far as whether that employee would be back certainly anytime soon, but there is some intent there. And so what that means is you've got actually a temporary leave, which is a COBRA triggering activity, life event that occurs. And so a layoff and a reduction in force really covers those COBRA triggering events, those life events that do affect or interact with the benefit plans or the benefit components that that employer is offering. All right. So as we look as far as a review, this is absolutely pressure tested many of the policies that an employer would have written or did not write at all. And this, what's nice is that this has kind of come up here now because of the pandemic, but it really gives you an opportunity to do a more solid, firm review of the various policies. And you do need to think about all the policies. So not just leaves of absence, although very important. You should also look at those ERISA documents. You know, 3/4 of employers today do not have efficient, effective, any ERISA types of compliant documents. And so this is an opportunity for you to get those employers to get it in writing. All right. So Lisa.
Well, I just wanted to mention here that you'll see that a lot of times a broker comes to us and says, my clients are asking for help with policies and procedures, or they need a handbook, and this is just out of my realm. So I want to bring to your attention, you probably have seen this before, but we do have HR Advisory Advanced Services. These services, you talk to a credentialed HR person. They can help you define these definitions that we went through. They can update policies. They can help you create policies. But something newer and very exciting is HR Counsel. And where HR Advisory Advanced is advice, counsel is legal. So we've got more information we can share with you, your local prime pay rep can share with you, but it is legal advice and assistance with HR policies, procedures, and employment.
Fantastic. And it is very cost effective for an employer to get fully up to speed with their leave of absence policies, but just policies and procedures, employee handbooks. And all the while, we've seen litigation start to come out of this, right? And so having that legal aspect is an important quality. Thanks, Lisa. Let's dig here into the scenario, okay? So we want to kind of focus. We're gonna talk about the employer, talk about some of the technical things, but Elisa is really going to come on to talk a little bit more too about the employee side of the aisle here with this scenario. So let's kind of plant the seed in regard to what the scenario that we're talking about here today, what it looks like, okay? So you guys, I just need a picture here, okay? Not necessarily my picture or Lisa's picture, all right? Just, picture here of this scenario, because we're gonna follow this through then the rest of the slides. So you have an employee here now that is actually gonna be working or currently works with an employer that has 150 employees. So they are considered an applicable large employer. It doesn't have to be 150 employees, right? It could be 50, could be a commonly controlled group that gets them to an applicable large employer. But we are speaking about here in this scenario, that way we can kind of cover all the different aspects. We are including an employee that's working for an applicable large employer. This particular employee is a variable hour employee. So just briefly definition. Based on the facts and circumstances of that employee being hired with this company, it was determined that we didn't really know how many hours that they were going to work. It could be more than 30 hours, less than 30 hours, and so they stepped in employment as a variable hour employee. We see this a ton, certainly in several different industries, but we've got a lot of employers with many variable hour employees. So this employee is a variable hour employee. They had gone through a measurement period, okay, as all variable hour employees would need to be measured. And after that, it was determined that they did work 30 hours or more in that measurement period, and therefore had the ability to enroll in coverage. All right, so they're currently within their stability period, okay, as an employee. So they're enrolled in group medical, they're enrolled in dental. They also were part of the transit benefit, the commuter benefit, because they took the subway to work, put in whatever mass transit vehicle there that you would want, and they also have a child under the age of 13, and so they're also participating in the dependent care accounts, all right? So everybody's got that mental picture there? All right. So what I want to try to do, what we want to try to showcase here today in this scenario is three different aspects, okay, to this. You've got an employee that is first being furloughed, then moving to part-time. What does that look like for that employee? And then ultimately a return to work. What does that look like? Okay, so we want to try to cover these three areas with you in this particular scenario here today. So the first one is going to a furlough status. Okay, so the furloughed employee, okay, is an active employee. Even though they may not be getting any paycheck because they're not working, they are inactive on payroll, okay, but they are active on benefits. And generally we say generally they're active on benefits because normally that's going to be the case, okay, that they would be active on those benefits. There could be some scenarios not, but generally that is going to be the case. And that comes down to, is the employee a variable hour employee? So as I gave you in this scenario, the employee is considered a VHE and they're in their stability period, okay, and enrolled in benefits. That's a different set of decisions that have to be made when we're talking about a furloughed employee or a furloughed worker, okay? So it is important to ask. And so as a consultant or a broker here today, you would want to speak to your client and ask those questions specifically about that employee and understand that even though that VHE is considered a full-time employee under ACA standards or mandate because they were needed to be given coverage, you still need to dig a little bit deeper as far as, so where does this employee sit, you know, as a VHE? Have they gone through their measurement periods? Are they in their stability periods to understand kind of their coverage levels? Review a leave policy. Clearly, prior to the pandemic, which would be extremely appropriate, the employer should have reviewed their leave policy, you know, just to make sure that it stacks up to where it needs to be at the end of the day. But now is a good time than ever to look at their FMLA policies, okay, because their written FMLA policies are going to be very detailed as it relates to eligibility, timing, funding, all of those things that will be that, you know, we'll ultimately here talk about. It also talk about the company policy for premium share. It's going to outline whether that employee who is going out on furlough, whether they're going to actually have to pay in advance of them leaving for on that leave, whether they'll do a pay-as-you-go method throughout their furlough, or certainly do a catch-up at the end when they come back out of furlough. So that policy, those leave policies are really going to be able to provide that level of detail. And then certainly we're going to have to bring in the FSA, the DCA, the commuter benefits in that policy as well. And so as you think about a furloughed employee here at the very bottom, you've got the employee continues to pay for their portion of benefit cost. So there's no pre-tax for the employee. So while on furlough, that employee is not going to be able to use pre-tax dollars to make their contribution, but they you know, certainly have the ability to make post-tax contributions. And so the employer needs to think through, well, what's my collection method? Am I going to send an invoice to my employees? Because I'm not just interested in the medical benefit, this is all benefits that are offered. This could be pet insurance, critical illness, dental, vision, medical, health FSA, right? In this case, it's a DCA, you know, that they would have. And so then the FSA, based on the plan design, a health FSA, certainly, and DCA, those contributions could be made also through that policy. So it's important to have that written policy in place. Oh, let me back up here.
So one of the things that we've added, because brokers were coming to us, you had just talked about the employer invoicing. Most employers don't invoice. And the employers are asking their brokers, the clients are saying, my broker, can you help collect? So we have rolled out a premium billing service. And this simply is to help collect the employee's portion of whatever they participated in those benefit plans. Because there's no longer the paycheck, we need to figure out a way to collect. So we're here to help with that if the need arises.
Good, awesome, awesome. So Lisa, I know you want to kind of dive in here to some of the employee changes. What does this look like for them?
So you had set it up very nicely. The employee is no longer working. They're no longer going to work. They're hopefully home enjoying time with their children, but they're not working. They're at home. So there's no longer the need for daycare. So now with these 2020, and it's 2020 only, I want to be clear about that, there is guidance that permits some flexibility with this. So the employees can drop their dependent care account, they can reduce it, they can stop, they can add whatever they need to do based on their dependent care needs. And they also no longer are taking the subway into work. They're not going to work, so they can stop their commuter benefit contributions as well. They potentially could be overfunding their FSA. So at the beginning of the plan year, they anticipated certain things occurring during the year. In this example, in our scenario, they had an elective surgery scheduled. Well, that elective surgery is no longer scheduled because just scheduling conflicts, all the backlogs of surgeries, they're not going to have it. So they have the opportunity, again, 2020 only, to decrease their FSA so they have not overfunded that FSA election. All right, next slide. In order to do that, I also want to mention that, and Steve, I know you're going to talk about this, but the employer would need to amend their documents to allow for that flexibility. You also had set up the scenario where the employee went through the initial measurement period. They certainly were working 30 or more hours a week, so they were eligible after, let's say, a 12-month initial measurement period. They're eligible to participate in the benefits, and they were in fact enrolled in the benefits. Well, even though they're in a furloughed status, that does not mean that they're still not eligible in or for those benefits because they're still in that stability period, okay? So they must continue their benefits during that stability period time. I do want you, though, to keep in mind, though, as they're in their furloughed status, they're not accruing any time. And they are currently in a measurement period. So the current measurement period that they're in, potentially their hours worked could affect their next measurement period that they go into. Okay, next slide.
All right. No, fantastic. Okay, so there are some decisions right here that an employee certainly needs to make. Certainly as they get the news that there's a furloughed opportunity for them, they are going to need to make some decisions. But also the company prior to that, they're going to need to think through some decisions as well on how they are going to make these benefits available. So I want to get a little technical just for a short time to kind of touch on some key areas here that an employer needs to think about. So in this particular scenario, this company decided, their policy stated that the employees on leave must pay for their cost of the benefit program monthly while on leave. It was specific, okay, within that leave policy. As we've talked to many of our partners who are attorneys, they tell us quite often, please get your leave policy in writing, please, and have it be as clear as possible as far as what is to be expected. Now, I'm going to talk here and just briefly here in just a little bit about this Notice 2020-29, but this and 33 actually, so I'll just briefly touch on those. But this company in this scenario also decided to change their document to allow for mid-year election changes. It allowed an employee then, based on the type of coverage that they have, and I'm going to dig a little deeper here yet in those particular notices, but it gave some additional flexibility for the employee to make changes based on their life experiences, right? Whether it's through the pandemic right now, but remove it, take the pandemic out. There's things that will occur, right? Changes that an employer needs to make. We need to put this employee on furlough for whatever that is. Giving the employee here the ability to make changes based on their original elections is a big deal. And so I'm going to touch on that here. I'll break that down for you in just a little bit. So this company decided to say, hey, we're willing to actually allow these employees to make those changes, even for grace periods, which generally affect your dependent care account, okay, that would be there. So, but it could affect your health FSA as well, depending on how the employer established their FSA. Now, in the case here of this employer, for the FSA, the employer does allow the employee to make up contributions when they come back to work. So you see here in this leave policy, for the medical plans, the other major benefit component plans, They wanted more of a pay-as-you-go structure, okay, while they are on leave. But for the FSA, they said, you know what, you can just catch up when you get back. And generally, however, I think I show an example here, just about what that could look like. Well, if they were on leave for 3 months, then they would be given 3 months to catch up, on deductions, when they return. But generally, it's any of the catch-up provisions should just be consistent with any other component benefit plans that you have. So not just FSA, make sure that that's just consistent with what you have. Commuter benefits, as you all may know, you can stop, start, increase, decrease those elections at any time. We would want to advise this employee that as an employer, hey, look, you don't want to create a balance opportunity in your commuter benefit account. If you're not using transit services to commute to and from work, you need to stop your contribution. Let's not build on a balance, here for that. And so with commuter benefits, this employee would have been directed, hey, go ahead and turn that deduction off, here at that time, but you have the freedom to do so. All right, I do want to touch on, before we go into the next phase here, some of the notice details. I think you guys, you've had a little bit of time to digest some of this, but I hope to at least just shed additional light as to what can be done. And I know there's a lot of information here on this screen. But the first is talking about mid-year elections. And let me tell you, when I saw it, Lisa saw it, we both were floored. I think I actually fell down, no, because I'm going, wait, I'm sorry, what just happened? For the opportunity here for employers and employees, this is actually a big deal, but the employer has to amend their documents to include it. So this isn't just a willy-nilly, hey, I'm an employee and I wish to make a change. If the employer didn't adopt it, then they're not going to be able to do it. So each employer is going to want to look at these notice requirements, each to their own instance, experiences, to determine what might be best for them or the right strategy to take, okay? So I'll just run through these as far as the bullets. So notice 2020-29 had really enabled, this affected your Section 125 plan document. So foundationally, if you guys recall cafeteria plans, once you make an election for your cafeteria plan, you generally were unable to, you're prohibited from changing that election unless you had a life event, okay? So guess what? The life event is COVID-19, okay? And so this enables then an employer to then formally adopt these, a portion or all of the specific items that were listed in this notice. So they don't have to adopt all of them. They could actually select which ones that are most pertinent to their employee population. So they need to formally adopt it. That means get it into the document. So get the SPD's plan documents updated. They have until the end of 2021 in order to do that. But they can only do that as long as they have provided proper communication to employees. So just like under ERISA, right, COBRA, you need to communicate. So the employer must communicate these changes, even though the documents may not be done as of yet. It could retro back to January 1st, 2020, but we're looking at prospective election changes, okay? We can't go back to January 1 to change the elections or to change the coverage levels or things of that nature. Can't do that. This is only from this point on, okay? So let's look at some of these on the group health plan side. And this applies to FSA, DCA, okay? So your health flexible spending account and your dependent care account. Guys, listen in, all right, on this, because we get a ton of questions as it relates not only to the group health plan, but also to dependent care, because of summer day camps and people having balances in their accounts and so forth. So what an employer could adopt is to permit their employees to waive, those that waived coverage from the beginning could enroll. Those who revoked, those who wish to revoke their existing election, I just want out, okay? The only way they could do that on a group health plan is that they do have a kind of attestation that they have a meaningful group health, a health plan that they are enrolling in. So they do have to show proof that they're in another plan. They just can't revoke it and get out of it. All right, so they will have to show proof of them being enrolled. They could change to another group health plan, and what that means is say that employer has two options, and the employer is in the base option. They want to buy up, or go to the richer type of benefit, that they could be allowed to do that as well, and also change their coverage level from self-only to family or employee plus one, okay, whatever that may be. So this particular notice really opened up the gamut in regard to group health plans, FSAs, DCAs. Again, the employer has to formally adopt it, all right? So this isn't just anybody can kind of full reign do whatever they want. And so just keep in mind that the key cafeteria plan initiatives, provisions, those are all certainly going to still remain in place. Now, kind of going over to the claims extension, if anything through the pandemic, what it has done, and I think Lisa had alluded to, earlier, is that, listen, once we got our stay-at-home orders, a lot of the medical services were just not getting done. I mean, there was no one to go to, certainly for elective types of procedures or expenses that they could incur. And so that could have had it does have a material financial component to these participants that could be in an FSA, an HRA, a dependent care account. They were unable to spend down those dollars. And so what this has also enabled is an extension of those grace periods and run out periods that are there for not just the FSA DCA, but also the HRA. So you see run out periods in HRAs, okay? But for FSAs and DCA types of accounts, there could be a grace period, okay? And you just have to look at these from a plan level, but also a carryover. Now, one thing I want to show you then too in the bullet, notice 2020-33, is that an employer can also adopt the carryover limit, which would increase their carryover from $500 to $550. That's another nice feature that we feel that most employers would want to adopt. I mean, many employers for their health FSA have adopted the carryover provision, and this is certainly a very, very nice feature. It's not a lot more, but at least it's something there. You do want to consider the issues for HSAs in this scenario. So if the grace periods are extended and a participant has money still sitting in that account, and that grace period has been extended for the next several weeks, months, right? They're going to be ineligible to contribute to an HSA. So you want to think about how an employer has rolled out their FSA or DCA strategy, and if they also offer a qualified high deductible health plan with an HSA component, might want to consider its interaction. Lisa?
So all of these extensions, it's caused us a lot of extra work. We're actually having to go back and review all denied claims from the beginning during this applicable period, and potentially reimbursing some claims that were denied before. So we are in the process of reviewing all of those claims. So we're not missing it. We're also amending plan documents. So if we are your FSA or HRA administrator, we are providing full compliance, right? The documents. Well, we're going to have to amend those documents if, in fact, your clients are asking for these changes or the flexibility that's being provided. We do not charge anything additional for amending the documents, but we do need to know that the documents need to be amended. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, actually, Lisa, I'm going to let you continue here because we're going to move that process. If you guys remember the picture, furlough, part-time, and then back to work. Why don't we kind of touch on, Lisa, some of these aspects of the employee and part-time status?
Okay, so we are here in good times, or better times, I should say. Some employers are getting back to business part-time maybe. So they've asked the employees or some employees to come back, not on the full-time, their regular status, but get out of the furlough status and come back as a full-time employee, help out with some of the needs that they have. So remember, in the scenario that we had set up, they are in a current stability period and they never lost benefits when they were on furlough. They will not lose the benefits when they come back part-time either, because they are protected under ACA during that stability period. So those benefits will continue. I do want to mention though, and we can't get into all the details of this just simply because the amount of content that we have, but there is a potential for the employer to change the measurement period to a monthly measurement period. And if they do so, qualify to adopt this monthly measurement period, that part-time employee now could potentially lose and will lose benefits. So in that situation, they now become COBRA eligible. When they're COBRA eligible for these benefits, we're getting questions, well, what's the effective date? They've been out, they've come back, they're really not qualified for benefits. Just look to the loss of coverage. And when you look to the loss of coverage, you want to make sure that you review that policy and know what the policy says loss of coverage is. For example, the end of that month. The company also can make a COBRA premium subsidy if they choose to do so. So that may surprise some companies that can be done. So look at the furlough situation where the employee was out and they continue to pay their portion of the premium, only their portion in our scenario. Well, by coming back part-time, the employer may not want to have them pay the entire COBRA premium, right? They're coming back to work. We don't want to change that situation. So to level set, the employer could actually provide this premium subsidy for the COBRA premium, okay? So they're still in that same status where they're only paying for their portion of the premium. Also, we had talked about their participation in the flexible spending account. So in the health FSA, if they are no longer eligible for benefits, they're not eligible for the health FSA. And if they have a positive balance in the account when that occurs, they can continue their health FSA under COBRA as well. All right, I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lisa. I mean, again, there's a lot of choices for that employee that certainly if COBRA starts to come into the picture, all right, it adds a little more options and choices for that employee here at this time. So as we move to part-time, they're still an employee of the company. All right, so a couple things to think about. They're still an employee, still getting a paycheck, still on your benefits, okay, well, on COBRA benefits, but they're getting a check, right? And they can have deductions come out of their paycheck. So what that employee could do is actually pay for their COBRA premiums in two ways. One, at least not from a pre-tax basis, one would be to actually do it through the cafeteria plan of that employer, okay, and I'll touch on that here in a second. And then secondly is an HSA. So if that employee did have a balance in their HSA account, a qualified expense item that can be reimbursed is COBRA premiums or COBRA premiums. And so that employee at least would have some additional dollars that could be used from there to pay for that premium. The other option was that option one, where it's just, hey, I'm right through my paycheck, I'm going to just pay my COBRA premium right through each pay period. Now, one thing to note, that employer may want to look at the eligibility provisions of their cafeteria plan to ensure that a part-time employee, okay, could actually facilitate those deductions on a pre-tax basis. It's generally a simple amendment of your cafeteria plan, but it is something that you'd want to look at, because in some cases it could say something to the effect of, only full-time employees, could pre-tax, and that actually would remove the eligibility here for that part-time employee.
Yeah, it could say like medical eligible, have that kind of definition. So I would say probably most of the policies don't allow for this. So definitely would want to amend that policy. And again, just like our FSA amendments that I just spoke about, there's no additional cost. Just please let us know that we have to update their POP document to include this language.
Yeah, good. So that gets into the craziness of the announcement that came out from the Department of Labor and HHS and Treasury here at the end of April, okay, that kind of, I mean, it's a welcome. I love the I love the spirit, but wow, from an administrative aspect, what do we do here now? About part-time, they're on Cobra. We have a Cobra triggering event. I wanted to bring up here some of the technical components of what has come up in lieu of or as a result of the pandemic. And so it's this, is that these three authorities said, you know what, disregard Cobra deadlines, just disregard them. We're going to make a new deadline. And the new deadline for all of these notices, kind of the components, when you pay, decline, approve, I mean, any of those components of Cobra, you have until 60 days after the emergency period has ended. All right. So if we had a scenario, and I don't know, I have no direct line to anywhere, but if the pandemic, the national emergency period ends here at the end of August, then what this would say is that within 60 days from that date is when these deadlines really come into fruition. That's when that employee, former employee, needs to actually make their elections, make payment of Cobra premiums, all the way to when their original life event would be. So as you can see there at the bottom with these bullets, you know, an employer might say, whoa, hey, I didn't send out the election notice timely. No problem. The employee might say, I didn't elect Cobra by deadline. No problem, no worries. I didn't pay by the grace period, no problem, right? So basically, we've given and they've given employers and the employees on Cobra an out, or at least more wiggle room, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Now, one thing I do want to note is that employers should still get out the notice, the qualified election or event notice letter. They need to get that out sooner rather than later. Get it in the employee's hands, the former employee's hands, that information, so that then they can make a decision as quickly as they would like, or certainly as delayed as they would like, at least up to that last 60 days. You know, just keep in mind, don't try not to, a common mistake that most employers make is forgetting about their health FSA. We've said it now, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, but just remember that a health FSA can be Cobra qualified. Lisa?
Even with these extensions, we're not delaying any notifications. We are sending out those qualifying event letters within the same time frames that we've always sent them out. So as Steve said, that's really best practice. We're encouraging, if we're not doing the Cobra administration, employers to do the same. We are, though, inserting a supplemental page, a 1-page with some detailed information about these extensions as far as the Cobra, the payments, the grace periods, and so forth. So there is additional information that we're sending out about this.
Very good. So that comes down to a checklist before we come to our come back to work kind of aspect. Just want to touch on a few things here. We've talked about reviewing leave policies. I know I've talked to many brokers here over the last couple months, and I think we all felt it probably not as appropriate to talk to employers about, hey, let's get your leave policy, you know, completely in writing, although it was an important thing to do. They may not have wanted to look at ERISA documents or other plan documentation at that time, but it's getting to that point where now's a very good time to be sitting down with your clients to have that review. You want to look at really policies, procedures, look at their current employee handbook. Even though that it's not a federal requirement to provide an employee handbook, the employee handbook is the most effective way to deliver that information. So have your employers think and consider that. Change Cobra administration practices. So if you have somebody like Prime Pay, we got your back. We got your employer's backs in determining all of the necessary next Cobra steps that need to be made. So we'll provide that advice along the way. But you could have employers that are doing it on their own elsewhere, and certainly you want to have that conversation on how that is being handled. Okay, with your clients. You want to ensure that you're a third-party administrator. Okay, this could be group health plan, self-funded, whatever it may be. It could be an FSA administrator like Prime Pay, an HRA. But you're going to want to make sure that denied claims that have gone after the plan year has ended, so they're still in this phase of, well, they need to be reviewed again and possibly paid as qualified expenses. Those denied claims are going to have to be reviewed. Prime Pay is doing a lot of that work here right now. Check your ACA status. You're going to have a lot of employers that have made some significant workplace population changes. And if they are an applicable large employer this year, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're an applicable large employer next year. So if they fall below, if they're on that bubble of 50 full-time employees and equivalents, based on a number of employees being laid off, furloughed, right? Those changes, that could actually shift how they're going to be counted as an applicable large employer next year. You also want to consider FSA and DCA non-discrimination testing. With those changes in workforce population, it can have an effect on the employer's ability to pass their non-discrimination test. The one area that is always a critical one is dependent care, the dependent care account. And so we've been suggesting or recommending that employers perform at least a mid-year non-discrimination test to just kind of gauge where they sit with that. All right, so back to business. I sure hope that you all are having this very statement right here with all of your clients right now. Let's get back to business, right? I think I'm hearing, Lisa, I'm hearing some, some clapping going on here. Believe me, we love that. We'd love to hear that sound, actually. So return to work is very important. I'm not going to be able to do this justice here right now, but I would ask you to see our recent client webinar that we did in May that spoke specifically about OSHA safety guidelines, what employers need to ensure and do to bring those employees back to work. One of the policies that have been listed is that an employer must have a pandemic response plan or policy that's in writing, that's communicated to the employees. PrimePay just introduced ours here not too long ago. So it's important that these employers, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know I needed this pandemic response plan, but you do. The exposure to liability can be a big deal. We have seen litigation up through the Department of Labor here. There was one case in Arizona. We've seen some others here where suits or litigation has already begun as it relates to PPP, as it relates to the emergency paid sick leave, right? I mean, there's so many things that people are going to pick on. And when you have a population that is being removed from an employer, so being terminated, laid off, whatever it may be, that can actually up the ante here. So the main thing is to think about your type of business. How is that going to impact your workers' comp claims? Okay, it is going to impact. Every state is different. We get a question a lot about, so what are the workers' comp details? You got to check in with every state. Every state and carrier is really driving a different message as it relates to COVID-19 claims and how it actually is going to impact their workers' comp policies. OSHA, there is a tremendous amount of safety measures that each employer is going to need to provide as those employees come back. Can you ask health screening questions? Can you take the temperature of the employees as they're coming into the building each and every day? What can you ask them? What can't you ask them? Can I just send an employee home if I think that they, are contagious or whatever? So the webinar that we had done in May is actually probably going to be the best way for you to get a more detailed look into this. But return to work, it's upon us, but it's going to be very important for an employer to adhere to many of the new policies. Lisa?
So that new policy that you just referenced that we actually just rolled out ourselves, we used HR counsel, our HR counsel to assist us with creating that policy. Your clients will probably come to you if they know about it and ask you. Most likely they don't even know about it. So proactively talk to your clients about that need. And we would love to help you. HR counsel would love to help your clients directly craft that policy to ensure that, people are frustrated right now, right? And look how quickly all these suits are coming about. So let's help protect our mutual clients from having this happen.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. So you guys have actually given some great questions. And as I said early on, we're going to go ahead and follow up with you at the end after the webinar is concluded. So we'll get back to you directly as it relates to your questions. But as I'm looking at, there's some really good ones here. And I know we can get back to you with answers there. What I am excited about to bring to you here right now, and Lisa's actually going to take the reins here on this, we have been looking for a way, a meaningful way to provide a tool or a resource for our broker partners to be able to manage the compliance risk with their clients. And we think that we're onto something here. And so we're excited to announce here today, available today, we have a compliance assessment tool that can be in your toolbox. So Lisa, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Steve. So we are just rolling this out. We all talk acronyms in this industry, so we are calling it CAT. So if you hear me say CAT, that is what I'm talking about, Compliance Assessment Tool. What's that?
Hopefully we got some cat lovers. I'm hopeful.
Figure out how to use the acronym for dog instead of cat. Anyways, this is a complimentary online tool that we are providing to our broker partners. It is really dynamic. So I think you can see the enthusiasm in my voice as I've talked to brokers about this and have walked through this tool. It's really exciting to see as they walk through the different questions, other questions may come up based on the answers, or it may just skip and go to the next section. So it is a way for you to sit down with your clients. Some brokers are actually just giving it to their clients, having their clients go through it on their own, and other brokers are working through it together with their clients. Completely up to you how you want to manage it. But what you will do is online, you will send them, the employer, a link, and that link will launch this compliance assessment tool, asking them some fairly simple, straightforward questions to determine how they are or aren't staying in compliance. And at the very end, after they go through the questions, and this is where you may need to get involved, helping them answer some of the, maybe the ERISA questions and so forth, it produces a pretty detailed report at the end that not only the client, but you can access. And it will show gaps of where they need to really pay attention to help them bring themselves in compliance and the potential risks and penalties that they may have. So the assessment tool goes into several different areas. It is benefit related. So it covers ERISA, it covers summary plan descriptions, the wrap documents, non-discrimination testings reviewed, their Form 5500 compliance, if they answer the question if they're a certain size, POP documents, questions about their POP documents, their COBRA adherence, ACA, and even family medical leave. So these areas are covered with questions, and then once those questions are answered, Steve, if you go to the next screen, they will see on the right-hand side of this slide is gauges. This is what happens online. So at the very end of all the questions, it will gauge in each one of those areas that I just talked about how they're, so it's a visual depiction of their compliance gap. So anything that's in the green area, they're doing pretty good. Yellow may have some caution, probably want to take a look at it. If it's in the orange or the red area, you definitely need to work with them in that capacity. So at the very top, it gives an overall compliance score, and then below that is each one of those areas that I talked about, ERISA, POP, wrap documents, and so forth. On the left-hand side, the compliance summary report. So at the beginning of that report, and it's a very detailed report, several pages long, it also provides this guidance. So visually, again, they can see where they're potentially needing to really pay attention to where they have some compliance gaps. Then if you would go to the next slide, I'm just giving a couple little snippets of what the report looks like. So I pulled the ERISA area. Now this is much more detailed. This is just a very small section of it. It reviews what ERISA is. And it also outlines what the client's obligation for ERISA is. You'll see here that they scored pretty well, 7 out of 10. I would still encourage you with your client to take a look at where that gap is because they're not 10 out of 10. Then once it goes over the compliant, what ERISA compliance requirements are, if you go to the next slide, it provides in detail how your client answered the specific questions. All right, so you can step by step go through it with them, discussing what they need to do. And then finally, at the end of this section, It will talk about the potential compliance risks and the potential penalties. So it talks about civil penalties, criminal penalties, whatever may be applicable for that area. So each one of your compliance areas provides this kind of detail.
So Lisa, you're telling me that this will actually guide a broker at asking the appropriate questions to their clients about these kind of crazy compliance issues?
It will. So the brokers that we're talking to right now, most of them are sitting down, well, virtually, with their clients going through this, because some of the areas the clients just may not be able to answer. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to share a couple things that we're providing. There is a lot of questions that could be pretty technical. So we are providing you with all of the definitions of those questions, so you're comfortable in guiding your clients through that. If you would like us to assist those first couple compliance discussions and using the tool, we are here to help you with that as well. We are providing, in addition to the tool, assistance to help you roll it out, to communicate with your clients what it is you have to offer them to help them mitigate their risk, bring them in compliance, and identifying really their gaps in their compliance. We have a co-branded marketing flyer that you can use to communicate with them. We hear very common objections from clients, so we're able to help you talk through those objections. Most of it, I'm sure you've heard as well. Your clients don't know what they don't know. How can they even start? Start with a compliance assessment tool. Some clients, I'm shocked by this, but they're telling our broker partners, I'm going to take my risks. I don't think I'll get audited. I don't believe that. We've got tools to help you through those kind of discussions. So you will be given what we call a broker hub. This is your online access to manage this. Over on the left-hand side of this, this slide, you'll see a purple box, and it says Refer Employer. You simply click on that box and provide the employer's name and email address, and it will be sent to your client, the link for the assessment tool. Okay, so you may want to schedule a time to walk through that with them. Once they click on that link, they have access. Once they complete that and they have that report that we shared with you, that report will rest in your broker hub. So you will have access to their report. If you're not working with them through that questionnaire, you can go back at any time and see what clients ran the assessment and what the report actually showed. You have time to review it, so you can create the conversation or the talk track that you want to have with them. So that's accessible 24/7, anytime in your broker hub. We will provide instructions how to set up the broker hub. It's very easy. You probably won't even look at the instructions, but it's there for you to get you started. As I said, we'll give you the definitions, so don't be concerned about not knowing what is being asked or what informational bubbles occur throughout that assessment. We're providing that to you. And then the report will show their compliance score specific to that particular client of yours. The regulations that are required, as I just showed you, your client's response, their potential compliance risks, and the penalties. I actually have some brokers that just started using this with prospects. So I say clients, it can be prospects as well. I would actually encourage that, because that will really set you apart from their current broker that they're utilizing. And the very last part of this, we are here for you. You know that we've got a compliance department. Our compliance department is overseen by an ERISA attorney. We have your back. We can support you through this as well. So after they take the assessment, if you need help, reach out to us. We'll help you through that. All right, I think.
It's so exciting. I mean, I'm getting the questions too. So, this costs a bundle, right? The fee must be enormous. Lisa, what does that cost?
So I probably didn't say it strong enough in the beginning. It is complimentary. We feel like, talking to our broker partners again and again about compliance, it's a tough conversation. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know where to begin. So we really want to support you, and this is just one tool to help you have that conversation. We are providing it to you at no cost.
Absolutely, thank you. So here's what we're going to do. Here's what we have in store, at least for you. We will be holding a webinar that will be dedicated to additional training and information on this new tool, this compliance assessment tool. Look for a date here, forthcoming. It'll be coming here soon when we roll that out. But I do ask you, in the poll question that you have there, since you're there right at your computer, take a moment, let us know what you're thinking about this. You might say, this isn't important to me right now, not at this time. That is fine. Maybe you want to connect on other things. That is fine as well. But we'd like to just get an insight with you, if we can speak to you directly as it relates to this tool and how you and your agency can actually use it. Hopefully not only securing business, but driving hopefully more business with your clients. Again, Lisa, a common question that has come up again is just, the different compliance items that is being discussed. Do you want to just comment on that again? I mean, it's pretty comprehensive as far as the different subjects and topics.
Sure. So it really encompasses all of your benefit compliance. There's ERISA questions, there's a premium only plan section, your ACA, your FMLA, your WRAP documents, your SPDs. Did I miss anything, Steve? It's all encompassing. And as we mentioned in the beginning of our webinar today, your clients, their policies, their procedures, their written documents, their WRAP document, everything is being tested today. So now's a perfect time to have this conversation with your groups. They may have some additional time because many people are, kind of working from home, or they're not in their regular day-to-day. Now take the time, have that conversation with them. And it doesn't really take that. I would say it would probably take about 20 minutes to go through this. They may have to come back to it. They may need to pull a document to check something. There is also a note section. So as they go through it, they may want to jot themselves a note or two to check on something. Maybe they have to check with their CFO on something or pull a policy. And then at the end, when that report is produced, those notes will also be produced in that report.
Fantastic. Oh, I see a lot of you could not do the poll question. That's okay, but a lot of you have put in the question box, kind of if you'd like to learn more information, just go ahead and comment right in the question box, hey, not now, or sure, please, somebody contact me to kind of dig into it a little bit more. That's honestly what we want to try to do with you here. We would love your feedback. We think that we have a tool here that enables your clients to get closer and closer to being fully compliant. And many of you have come to us and said, but I don't even know the questions to ask fully. Or, you know what, I just haven't even touched this with my clients for the last 5 years since they've been a client. How on earth do I get them to understand that this is important, that I need to, that I'm bringing it to them, even though it may be 5 years later. This is a great dynamic tool that can be used. And what is beneficial is it asks the right questions. So you don't have to come up with the questions. It's going to provide all of that. And then provide a really strong resource tool in a report that maybe the employer acts on right now, maybe not, maybe it's down the road, but it's something that you can bring back out 6 months down the road or a year later at renewal and say, hey, we never tackled your ERISA. Do you want to do something here now, to get compliant? So we are hopeful that you will see some great benefit in this, not only for your existing clients, but those whom you would prospect with. So Lisa, good stuff. Thank you for the content here today. I trust that many of you at least gleaned some information as it related to some of that technical guidance, but also the scenarios. These are real scenarios today. They may be more exponentially being decided on and used here during this pandemic, but these are actually real strategies that happens with any employer at any time, okay? Every employer at any given time is going through situations, experiences that they need to make decisions in this manner. And so I hope that the information that we provided today provided just that. So we will be providing you then a link to the recording. We're going to be providing a copy of the presentation deck For those of you who did complete that poll question, or at least provided some feedback, we'll reach out to you to talk more about the compliance assessment tool and how it could be beneficial there for your clients. We hope that you can find some real use for that. I'd ask you to continue, if you haven't subscribe to our blog articles. We have some great stuff. Mitch Geiger, head of compliance, he's writing stuff constantly, and there's really good stuff in there. And you can also visit support.primepay.com. We have a COVID-19 tile there that you can peruse through, but you could pull up anything, FSA, DCA, COBRA, and pull up really a tremendous amount of published articles on each and every subject. So we hope you can go to that support.primepay.com. And we want to announce that next month's webinar, we have Shay Rowbottom that is going to be joining our webinar as our guest speaker. If you guys have seen her on LinkedIn, you love her. She's awesome. And we're excited to actually bring her on July 8th as part of our next webinar. So we hope you can join us. Lisa, I'll let you have final remarks if you have.
I think we've covered so much content. Just know that we are here for you. Please reach out if you need assistance. Looking forward to showing you that compliance assessment tool. I think you will get a lot of use out of it. And thanks for your time today.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry we went a little long, but have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you actually physically very soon. Have a good one.